February 22nd, 2026. Before dawn, in a mountain village in western Mexico, inside a cabin surrounded by forests and guarded by bodyguards carrying rocket launchers, the most dangerous man in the Western Hemisphere was sleeping. He had evaded the Drug Enforcement Administration for more than a decade. There was a $15 million bounty on his head, and he was about to be found because of someone who loved him. His name was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, but the world knew him as El Mencho. He was born in poverty in the Mexican state of Michoacan, a region known for avocado orchards, cockfighting, and long narco-trafficking traditions. Few people could have imagined that one day he would be compared to Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, one of the most infamous drug lords in history. Former DEA International Operations Chief Mike Vigil once said bluntly that El Mencho was almost on the same level as El Chapo. But what many people don't realize is that El Mencho did not begin his life as a cartel boss. He actually started as a police officer. Before leading one of the most militarized criminal organizations on Earth, he wore a badge. That experience taught him how law enforcement hunted criminals, knowledge that would later make him extremely difficult to capture. In the 1980s, El Mencho made a bold move and illegally crossed the border into the United States, eventually settling in California. He worked quietly and tried to keep a low profile, but eventually he was arrested on drug charges and deported back to Mexico. Despite this, he returned to the United States again and was arrested once more in 1992. After serving 3 years in a U.S. federal prison, he was deported again. This time, however, he decided not to return to America. Mexico had something better waiting for him: opportunity. He began working for Ignacio Nacho Coronel, a powerful leader in the Sinaloa cartel who operated from Jalisco. El Mencho proved himself to be intelligent, loyal, and ruthless. He learned everything about the narcotics business. When Mexican military forces killed Nacho Coronel in 2010, most of his criminal network collapsed. El Mencho saw the opportunity and moved quickly to take control. Around 2009, he co-founded the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, widely known as CJNG. In its early days, the group called itself Los Matazetas, meaning the Zeta Killers. Their reputation was built on extreme violence that shocked even experienced criminals. Yet this brutal strategy worked. In less than a decade, El Mencho went from being a deported ex-convict to commanding a cartel armed with drones, rocket launchers, and operations in more than 20 countries. Despite his power, one question continued to puzzle authorities around the world. Where was he hiding? The answer, surprisingly, was much closer than anyone realized. By the mid-2010s, CJNG had evolved into something more than just a cartel. It had become a massive criminal enterprise that operated almost like a corporation. The organization expanded using a franchise model, where local gangs across Mexico pledged loyalty to El Mencho in exchange for weapons, drugs, and protection. Soon, CJNG controlled operations in more than 20 Mexican states and expanded internationally into countries like Ecuador, Colombia, parts of Europe, and Southeast Asia. One of El Mencho's biggest criminal innovations was fentanyl trafficking. According to officials in the White House, he became one of the major suppliers of fentanyl entering the United States, the same drug responsible for tens of thousands of overdose deaths each year. Between 2015 and 2019, Mexico's national homicide rate nearly doubled, and much of that surge in violence was linked to CJNG's rapid expansion. The United States government increased the bounty on El Mencho several times, from $5 million to $10 million, and eventually to $15 million in December 2024. The highest reward in the history of the Narcotics Rewards Program. Yet despite the massive manhunt, no one could find him. He constantly moved locations and trusted very few people. His inner circle was extremely small. One of the most important figures in that circle was his wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia. She was not just the wife of a cartel boss. She was a key reason he gained power in the first place. Rosalinda came from the powerful Valencia crime family, one of the founding dynasties of organized crime in Jalisco. Her family connections gave El Mencho the network and legitimacy needed to build CJNG into a powerful organization. However, their relationship eventually broke down. According to Mexico's Secretariat of National Defense, Mexico, the couple had been separated since May 2018. El Mencho had begun a relationship with another woman named Guadalupe Moreno Carrillo. Despite this, the divorce was never finalized, and Rosalinda remained his legal wife. In early 2025, Rosalinda was arrested by Mexican authorities. Then, unexpectedly, she was released from prison in February of that same year. Officials never confirmed why she was freed, but the timing raised serious questions. Only days after her release, El Mencho's brother was arrested, his son received a life sentence in a U.S. prison, and another close family member was already incarcerated. His inner circle was beginning to collapse. Soon afterward, intelligence reached Mexican authorities connected to someone close to one of El Mencho's romantic partners. The information pointed investigators to a remote location in Tapalpa, a small mountain town about 2 hours southwest of Guadalajara. Surrounded by pine forests and quiet streets, it seemed like the last place anyone would expect to find the world's most wanted drug lord. On February 20th, 2026, Mexican security forces quietly surrounded the area. Special Forces units moved into position while the Mexican National Guard blocked nearby roads. Military aircraft circled above. Before dawn on February 22nd, the operation began. Gunmen guarding the compound immediately opened fire. A violent firefight broke out. El Mencho and his bodyguards tried to escape deeper into the forest toward another cabin. A second battle erupted before the soldiers finally captured him. He was wounded but still alive. Authorities placed him on a military helicopter headed toward Mexico City for treatment and interrogation. However, somewhere in the air over western Mexico, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes died from his injuries. But his death triggered something even more shocking. Within hours, CJNG launched a coordinated wave of violence across 20 of Mexico's 32 states. Vehicles were set on fire, highways were blocked, and gunmen appeared in the streets of Guadalajara, turning the city into a ghost town. In the tourist city of Puerto Vallarta, visitors hid in their hotels while explosions echoed outside. The United States Embassy in Mexico issued shelter-in-place warnings for Americans in several states. Flights were canceled, and Guadalajara's international airport was temporarily shut down. El Mencho's lieutenant, known as El Tuli, ordered his men to attack soldiers wherever they found them, offering a bounty for each one killed. In Jalisco alone, dozens of members of the National Guard were killed within a single day. In less than 24 hours, the death of one man had plunged a country of 130 million people into chaos. Mexican forces later tracked down El Tuli the same day and stopped his attempt to escape. However, a troubling question remained. Was Mexico actually safer now? History suggests the answer may not be simple. When El Chapo was captured, the Sinaloa cartel did not disappear. Instead, it fractured into smaller factions, which often become more violent and harder to control. Today, CJNG still exists. Its leadership structure is uncertain, and many regional commanders may attempt to seize control. Each one could try to prove their power through violence. Ironically, Guadalajara, the city most closely associated with El Mencho, is preparing to host matches during the 2026 FIFA World Cup, where millions of visitors are expected. Mexico now faces a major security challenge as it prepares for one of the largest global events. And so the story returns to the beginning, to betrayal. Whether it was his wife, a girlfriend, or someone close to him, the most powerful drug lord in the Western Hemisphere was ultimately discovered not by satellites or billion-dollar intelligence programs, but by someone who knew exactly where he slept and decided he was no longer worth protecting. For more than 30 years, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes built a criminal empire based on fear, loyalty, and violence. He evaded authorities, survived rivals, and expanded his cartel across continents. But in the end, he did not fall to a massive military strike or a sophisticated intelligence operation. He fell because someone close to him made a single phone call. And high above the mountains of Jalisco, the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere died in a military helicopter while his empire continued to burn below.